Hello, Donna Kato here. Welcome to my channel. Now today, I got a request from that last clasp I did, which was very, very simple. And somebody wanted to know how to make the more complicated clasp that is extremely difficult for most people to comprehend. It is not really intuitive the way it works, and that's why I sort of abandoned it in favor of my hook clasp, and in simple instances, that very, very, very simple clasp I did in that tutorial. But I said I would do it, so I will do it. Now, underneath this carved piece is the clasp I'm talking about, so let me turn it over. Now, this is the clasp fully engaged. And you can see, let me just turn it this way so that you can see that the cord on one half is glued in, let's say, 12 o'clock, and the cord in the other piece is glued at just about 6 o'clock. Now, well, let me take it apart. So the way it comes apart is this centerpiece drops, and then the cord slides through that opening. So let's do it the other way. You take the cord, goes through the opening, if I can do it. Then this disc, this very heavy, thick disc, is seated in this other piece, all right? And when you're wearing it, it pulls like this, so it's virtually impossible to get it out unless you have some slack in the necklace. So let me take it apart again. Now, that seems simple enough, doesn't it? But the complication lies in the structure of the C part. So let me just turn it so you can see there's a solid C that is opened like so. But if you turn it over, there's a break in the C. So one side features two pieces with that break in the middle, and the other side is a solid C. Now the break, let's just say the break would occur at about, I would say, 12 o'clock. Let me just try to scoot some of these things out. The break is here. So it would occur at about 12 o'clock. The other part, the cord, is glued in at approximately 6 o'clock, and the opening occurs at approximately 4 o'clock. If you're looking at a traditional clock with, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what that is. Now, it all seems very obvious right now, except that this clasp doesn't work unless, when you engage it, that open part is lying down or next to your skin, okay? If it's up like this, the clasp doesn't work. It doesn't work. You see, if it's up like this and you try to engage the clasp, well, this cord has nowhere to go. Remember, this opening is just to accommodate the cord when the clasp is engaged. So let me set up and we will do it. But I just want to say one more thing. This clasp itself is a little problematic for me because look, I've only got this much to drill into and glue. That's not really that secure. This part is fine because look, I have all of this that I can glue into. I can sink cord all the way from here to here. Well, that's quite a bit. But here, little too thin, that's not that secure. So I'm going to correct that when I make the clasp for you coming up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make the unbroken C. Now, I'm going to make this a little bit easier by just making it red, and then the other part of the clasp will be black. And were I to actually use this on items that I sell, I would definitely do this because in the same way that's going to help us through the teaching process, it will also help you if you have to teach the person who buys a piece from you how to use the clasp, all right? Because this solid C is not just there for decorative purposes and educational purposes, but it will never sit against your skin when you engage the clasp. And that's easier for people to understand. This will never sit against your skin when you engage the clasp, okay? So in terms of thickness, I've rolled it through number 3 on my atlas. It starts at 0. So I would say it's a medium thickness. It's not terribly thick, but it's going to be thick enough. What you don't want is you don't want something that's so thin that it may bend or break. So I think setting 3 is fine. Now I'm going to press it against my ceramic tile. And then I'm going to cut the perimeter. This is really, really big. Okay, so let's make it a little smaller. Next size down. Okay, like so. And then I'm going to select another cutter. And remember, I want to have enough space to drill into. So, I mean, I could offset it and drill into here, and that would actually give me plenty of space. I could, in that case, actually use a larger one and scoot over this way. Then notch out. Well, you know what? I'm just going to do it this way because you guys, I don't want to make this overly complicated with the different and various ways that you can alter it. So we're just going to do this. Okay. Okay, so this means I'll have this much to drill into and glue, okay, which is more than the other one. Now let's make our notch. It doesn't matter where this notch is going to be for now because that will come into play when we put the pieces together. Now what I did was I put it there. And the important thing is that you can slide the cord that you're using through. Doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be a lot bigger than that. This is absolutely fine. So now I'm going to put this in the oven and I'm going to cure it. And then I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. My Red Sea is cured. So what I'm going to do now, actually, let me talk about the difference between this particular clasp and let's say the hook clasp. First of all, this particular clasp is built on the decorative piece you're going to use. Whereas the hook clasp, and here I have one on a necklace I was working on, it can be made independently and then you put the actual decorative piece on later. So when you're building this particular clasp, the one I'm working on, you have to build it on something. So I'm going to build it on this lopsided disc. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So remember that you don't build this clasp independently. It's actually built on something that you're going to incorporate into your finished piece. That's this. Of course, it has to be larger than the C. So you really don't want to see the clasp sticking out from the sides, I don't think. All right, so here's the C. And to make it a bit easier, I'm going to take a pen and let's say that's 4. Let's say this is 6 o'clock right here. And let's say directly opposite is 12 o'clock. Okay, so I'm just going to indicate where the notch is, the cutout. So I will have clay from here to here, and from here all the way around to here. And of course, the reason why there's no notch here is because this indicates where we're going to drill into that thick mass of clay and glue the end of the cord. Okay, I'm trying to draw a cord. It's not wanting. That's cord right there. And that's where it's going to be glued in this particular piece. Okay, so how thick should this mass be? Let me just grab it. This, see this, how thick? Well, you know, it just has to be thick enough to accommodate whatever cord you're going to glue in. I tend to use 2mm cord, so I just need to make sure that that clay is thick enough to accommodate 2mm. So I've just doubled this over. I rolled it through setting number 1 on my Atlas Pus machine. So let's just take a little piece of 2mm cord and just make sure that, yes, indeed, this clay is thicker than 2mm. That's what I want. Now, the second thing you might want to consider in terms of how thick you're going to make this is the finished piece. Now, you can see how thick this is on the one that I showed you, that I described. Well, I made it thick because I wanted it to sit above the other discs, okay? And that's why I made it thicker, because by being thicker, it will sit on my skin, but it rises above the other pieces. And this was one of the first discs I made, so it's not the way I make them now, because you can see that the pads are exactly the same thickness. Well, the way I make them now is every other pad is thicker. So this pad would be this thickness. So every other disc rises above, the one adjacent sits below. They go up and down like that. Okay, so that's the second consideration. Now, because I am not going to be, I have no idea what this is going to be. This is probably just going to be a demo piece, right? So I'm not concerned about it. I'm just going to make it this thickness, which is 2 times setting number 1 on my pasta machine. So let's take the decorative piece and prepare it to receive this clay. I've rolled this through setting 6 on my pasta machine. What I'm going to do now is roll it together with my texture sponge through the same setting. Whoops, setting 6. This does not have to be very thick. So there we go. I'm going to take poly paste, and I am just, oh look, I have clay on my poly paste. Okay, here we go. Let's smear this on the back. You know, I could use liquid. I could. It would do the same thing. But my poly paste is right here, so that's why I'm using it instead. Okay, I'm gonna lay it down there. And then trim the excess. Let's just take a cutter. Let me just take a large cutter first. Let me just get rid of the excess that way. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit easier. And take my blade and just quickly scoot all the way around. I'm going to try to keep myself under my camera. All right, now we're ready. Okay, so when I cut this, I used this cutter. So I'm going to use it again. Let's cut it out. Then I used this centerpiece And let me try to get it in the middle. I will do my best. Like so. Oh, let's peel it up a bit like that and expel the center. Okay, now I indicated this. I'm not going to be able to see exactly where to cut. I will just do my best, okay? But I did this to show you what I'm gonna try to make happen. Now, because I'm gonna cut that notch out, I'm just gonna put poly paste only in the areas that I want to put this thick piece of clip. Okay. Ordinarily, when I'm making this, I don't mark this at all. I just kind of do it. Oops. Help. I just do it. And do my best. And I have to tell you, sometimes it works out better than others. What can I say? Okay, let's turn it over and let's cut this out, our 4 o'clock. Okay, so we got that out. There's a piece of lint in there. Okay, you know, if you've been watching, you know that I do struggle with lint. Okay, there we go. Now, remember that's 4 o'clock. This is approximately 6 o'clock, and here's 12 directly opposite. So now I'm going to cut the notch out on one side. Then, oops. Then on the other side, let's remove the notch. I'm a little off, but I'm not that worried about it, to be honest with you. So this is where the cord will go, and then this is where the cord will be glued, right straight through there, okay? All right, now this will get cured in the oven. Now let's take the cutout. The cutout will now, and I'm gonna make it just a tad smaller, like so. Because if it's exactly the same size, it's really hard to get it in. So I'm just making it just a tad smaller. I'm going to center it here. And let's just push it down like so. And then I'm just going to take a little tool like this, and push that edge down and smooth, push the edge down, smooth, push the edge down, smooth, push it down, smooth, and just work your way around to join them. And then you might want to think about putting your signature cane maybe on the back pad. Just like that. That looks good to me. And let me see about my signature cane. I have them all over the place. Okay. Well, I take a little bit, just a skinny little guy. My DK. Whoops. Let's just put it right there. Now, these pieces will be cured in the oven, and then I'll be back. Now, because this is slightly dished, it's not terribly dished, I'm going to put this one face down in baking powder. Okay, so I'm going to cure this, but, you know, there's one thing I wanted to tell you. Now, I did my best to make this exactly the same and exactly in registration, but obviously it's not. Now, I could try to take my blade and trim it away, but you know what's going to happen? What's going to happen is all of this back here is going to move. Now, I have this in a particular place, the opening and the notch, not exactly the same place I indicated, but I'm not unhappy with it. This is the way it's going to be. So rather than try to trim away the excess now, I'm going to sand it later because I want the opening. I don't want the opening to get distorted. I don't want this opening to get distorted. I will make this nice after it's cured, because if I try to correct it now, I'm going to ruin it. I'm going to have to do it again. I just know it. Okay, so now it's going in the oven. All right, so my two pieces are cured. And what you want to do, first of all, is make sure that this opening is big enough to accommodate the cord. Goes in quite easily, but I'm a little concerned about it coming out. So what I'm going to do is just take my blade and cut some of this just a little bit away. It's more like shaving little bits of it away. And enlarging it just a little bit so that I can be assured that this cord is going to slip easily back through. And I think that's pretty good. And you know, what you want is you want this opening to be as small as possible, because if it's very small, then it will be much more difficult to just fall off. It's not just going to disengage on you. Now, you can see that I have excess around here, and sometimes it is just easier to start out by taking a thick blade and just running along the edge and chopping off excess like so. I mean, I would have had to sand all of that off, and for me, I would just rather try to cut off as much as I can, like that. You see, all of this, because I cut it off, means I do not have to sand it off. Now, a little more difficult is going to, of course, be any excess that sits inside. So that is definitely going to have to be sanded. I have this, it's a half-round wooden stick. I bought these in Germany. They were more expensive than I think they need be. Even after I've used or really abused the sanding paper, I just cover it with my own, and it's a good, it's easy to grip. And because it's curved, it works very well on spaces like this. Okay, so now I'm just going to sand away all the excess that I can. And then I'll be back. All right, so here's the piece. I sanded it. I had to sand around the pad and then I had to sand a bit in the opening to make it fit. I sanded around the outside. You can see everywhere I've sanded because it's that light gray scratchy. Now, I do want to point out to you someplace that I made a mistake. And that is when I cut the pad, I should have added the thickness of the red clay, shouldn't I? So you can see that it is lower than the ring. They should be the same thickness. My error was in completely forgetting about the thickness of the red ring. All right. So when you do it, just remember that the thickness of this pad is not just the same clay you cut it out of, but you got to add that, whatever that thickness of the red is, in order to make them the same height. All right. So it's still going to work out fine. So because I put my initial on, let me say that this is where I will put the cord right there. All right. So then, if that's where that is, then directly opposite, I'm going to put the cord. I'm going to glue in the cord into the C. So it's right there at 6 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock goes into the pad. All right. So let me drill those out, and then I'll be back. So I've drilled the 2 holes. You can see the hole in the pad, and then I drilled a hole in the C piece. All right. So this is just a piece of cord I've got lying around. Good enough. This is just going to be a sample. So let's see how deeply I drilled. I pushed the cord all the way in, and you can see. So this cord is going to be sunk that deeply into the pad. Now, first I'm going to take, and I'm going to put an O-ring on the cord, like so. And then I will glue this in. Now it's an exact fit, so that's why I'm having kind of... Okay, so let me take my glue. You know, I've stopped buying glue. I used to have my black glue, but we can't get it anymore. So I've taken to using just Loctite gel. And I like buying these tiny ones because large bottles of glue will lose their stickum after a while. They don't... CA glue does not last forever. So I think that buying these tiny ones is the best strategy for me, because I have a better chance of actually having good fresh glue by buying these little ones. Okay, now I put a little bit of glue there. I'm just going to take and push the O-ring down. So now I've got the cord glued in the pad, and then I've got this O-ring that is also glued to the pad. It's just, I think, a little bit extra security. All right, so let's address the other side. I'm going to put, oops, gotta be fast, an O-ring right there on the cord. And then this time I'm going to be gluing in here. Now, I've only got that much space, so let's see how far so I'm only gluing in this deep. So in a situation like that, this O-ring is really additional security, additional, that I think you really need. All right, let's take the Loctite, put it in the hole. Now I'm going to push this down in all the way. once again, I'm going to take and just put a little bit right there. And you guys, if you've watched, you know, I'm really a sloppy glue person. And I'm pushing the O-ring right down there. So now I've got, once again, the glue in the hole and then the glue on the surface of the clasp. All right. So let's let those dry for just a second. And let me show you that, you know, you can also use this clasp for bracelets. This is a bracelet I made, and indeed, the clasp is the C. You see, it's the same clasp. And so far, I have not had any difficulty, but you can see I've got the O-rings positioned. This O-ring is not positioned, but anyway, I think you can see that it works. All right, so let's see if the glue is done. I've got the two pieces. The way it engages, remember, the red is away from your skin. The cut, the open C, is what lies next to your skin. I'm going to take the cord, go through the hole, and then let it drop in. Ooh, there's still glue. I still got glue. Uh-oh, I got the glue. Okay, so that's the way it engages, like this. Let me take it out. I will try that again after it's dry because I just got glue all over me. Okay, and the thing is, I think that had I remembered about the red piece, then this hole would be a bit farther away from the disc itself, or this, you know, the back of the disc. And I think that's when it works better. So I'm sorry I made that mistake. But there you go. Okay, so if you don't make that mistake, I think it will work out much better. As it is, it's still, I will use it for something. I will indeed use it for something. All right, so that is this clasp, and I hope you understand it, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing it. It was actually the first of the clasps that I designed. It took me a long time to design this one, but it works well. And as I have said before, the problem with it is that it's not the easiest to understand. It is not immediately understood how it is used. But if you understand it and you like it, I would encourage you to use it for your pieces. All right, so that's it for today. Please like and subscribe if you've learned something, or if you've enjoyed it. I really appreciate that. And until we meet again, I say bye. Hello, me again. I know I said goodbye, but I'm back again. Listen, I looked at this more and more, and it was so tight getting it in. And you know what the problem was? The problem was that the O-ring was getting stuck between this red pad and the pad on the back of this. And so, you know what I did was really simple. It's a simple solution. I got rid of the O-ring. I pulled out the cord, and then I drilled it out best I could. Again, it's really kind of hard to drill this rubber type cord, but I did the best I could. Then I glued into the hole without an O-ring, and you know what? It works much, much better. See? There we go. Just like that. There's nothing kind of holding it or nothing squeezing into too small a space. So, And particularly, it was not a difficult thing to do because remember how deeply I had glued that cord in? So this cord is really secure. It's deep. It's glued deeply into the pad. So and it really didn't need that O-ring. So I removed it and now everything is working much, much better. Okay, so that really is it. So now I'm really going to say goodbye. Bye.